Our jobs and our personal safety are at risk. That's what the Young Nurses Indaba trade union says they're facing. They're marching in Gauteng today to air their grievances. They say jobs are being cut and student nurses are not being absorbed into the staff complement. The nurses also claim security guards are abandoning their posts because companies are not being paid by the health department. What is the way forward? Lindokuhle Xulu is on this story to find out. Lindo, there are complaints about poor working conditions, poor remuneration, lack of security. The list goes on. And if this is to be believed, then this is a poor state of affairs for a group of people we should really be celebrating.
That's right, Tafuma. The list goes on and on in terms of some of the grievances that the Young Nurses Indaba trade union will be trying to raise today. You mentioned issues of not being absorbed. You mentioned issues of poor working conditions and unsafe working conditions, citing some of the issues around paying service providers, including the all-important security that guards nurses at some of these institutions that they'll be working in. But you are right. Today they are gathering, as you will be seeing just behind me, at the Gauteng legislature in Johannesburg. And what is intended to happen is that this particular union is intending on marching from here to the Gauteng Health Department's offices to try and find answers to some of those grievances. We understand they'll be handing over a memorandum addressing some of the challenges that nurses are facing. But we do know that we are coming from a very hectic week when it comes to development in the health sector, particularly in Gauteng, where we saw at the Baragwana Hospital there was a big protest outside there, speaking about the workers that were hired during COVID-19 as a COVID-19 response that cannot be absorbed at the end of the day. We understand that only half will be able to continue with their jobs while the other half will be left jobless. This is, of course, according to budget constraints when it comes to the response from the Gauteng Department of Health. But I can tell you that there are many issues that this particular union is raising, including the fact that while there is this particular job shedding or job cut that is going to happen, that is imminent in the new financial year of the country, they are saying that nonetheless the staff at some of these facilities is not sufficient, and they do not understand why government cannot make a permanent solution in terms of absorbing some of these workers in some of these institutions. But this particular union, the Young Nurses Indaba trade union, is simply painting a grim picture in terms of what we are headed for. They are saying we are headed for a catastrophe if these issues are not addressed, and they're saying that simply understaffed, simply unsafe in some of these institutions, and simply the management of these particular institutions, that is of course the incumbent, the Department of Health, is not doing enough, especially when it comes to service providers, to ensure that everything goes according to what it is, including those securities that will not be paid. So there are many issues that they are raising today, and with this particular march gathering behind me, they are saying that they want to find a way of actually working with the department and try to address some of these issues. But prime is of course the issue of employment and absorbing those that would be in the system already.
Yeah, despite thousands of nurses being on temporary contracts, those contracts that are set to end shortly, there were still shortages in hospitals. We still heard complaints of nurses being overworked and hospitals being under severe pressure. So how does the Gauteng Department of Health plan on dealing with that? We understand they're saying it's financial pressures, but the reality is there won't be enough staff at hospitals.
That's right, Tafuma. It's something that both the Department of Health as well as the head of one of the institutions, that is Baragwana Hospital here in Johannesburg, in Soweto, have admitted to, that hospitals are simply understaffed. And in fact, what is the current situation? It's a national approach where when COVID-19 hit, the response was that there would be an additional 8,500 workers that would have been, injected into the system to help alleviate pressures of COVID-19. But as things stand, those particular nurses were hired in terms of a grant that was given as a response to COVID-19. That has since lapsed, but what we understand is that there is a plan. About 1.1 billion has already been set aside for the new financial year to ensure that at least half of that 8,500 are actually employed and and put into key positions as a response to some of the needs of these facilities. But certainly these nurses would tell you that that is not enough already, because hospitals like Baragwana hospitals had cited that the 800 workers that were already employed there, the COVID-19 staff, was a help, a great help, but even them, they were not enough to actually help alleviate and get the hospital to its maximum capacity in terms of function. So there is a plan for government to hire at least half of those 8,500 medical staff, but at the end of the day, there are those in the department, those that are working and those that are even managing some of these hospitals, that are saying it's simply not enough. The 8,500 was not enough, and that is why we see such initiatives to say that there needs to be more that is done to make sure that the health department functions as it's supposed to be.
All right, Lindo, we'll be following that protest closely. We'll cross to you a bit later. eNCA's Lindokuhle Xulu.